Do you ever get this FlatsClass fans where your buddy asks you, what you catching them on? I see you're catching fish, you're posting them all the time. I can't catch redfish for nothing right now. You gotta be using something special. Well, let me tell you about a redfish's diet. There's not too much that's not on it. I mean, they love mud minnows, they love pinfish, they love mullet, crabs, shrimp. I mean, they'll eat almost any lure in the water. But what is one lure or one bait profile that they're super vulnerable to, especially when it's cold out? Well, it's invertebrates. That's right, invertebrates. Look at this picture right here. This is what my friend Captain Socrates sent me the other day. You see what's inside the belly of that redfish? I'm going to show you right now a handful of lures that can help you duplicate that picture and put you on the path to catching more redfish than you've ever caught December through February. Let's go down the shop and talk about it. So if you were paying attention to that picture I showed you, you're like, wow, I really never considered the fact that redfish eat invertebrates, sandworms, eels, pipefish, seahorses, things like that. If you're traveling in your boat, your kayak, or you're wading a flat, especially, and that's why I said December through February. A lot of that has to do with, we have these big negative tides, and then you'll have a weather component, a wind component that will dry the flat out even more. So you got high barometer, you got negative lows already, and then you've got wind blowing water further out. So you have these vast expanses, if you will, of grass and mud flats that are completely dry. Now, the life cycle of said worm is not like any other animal. It may be a day, it might be a couple of days, who knows? But it's not like they live a long time. Well, when you have these situations around these negative lows, and then they're timed with fronts and things like that that really blow that water out, these little creatures that need to be covered up by the water are exposed to the sun for long periods of time, and they die. So then you notice that there's all these wading birds, ibises, egrets, herons, and they're all working this mud flat or grass flat. And I'm not talking about 5 or 6 of them, I'm talking about 50 or more, maybe 200, who knows? It depends on where you are. If you're in the Everglades or the Panhandle, or if you're over on the East Coast somewhere here in Florida. But when you see that going on, that scenario where there's lots of wading birds working the bottom, you know they're eating this stuff. And just as soon as the water or the tide height starts to come up that hill and cover all these guys, there's this decaying scent in the water that just draws redfish, and they come up there and they chow down on these things. They really do. Now, they'll eat them alive too, but they're really chowing down on a lot of those dead ones. And that is, when you saw this picture, that's what that is. That's what's going on here. The redfish, a large part of their diet when it's cold out, are invertebrates, worms, things like that. So fortunately for myself, Z-Man has a lot of these patterns, or profiles, I should say, in our product line. And I want to show you a few right here. Naturally, the first one is the big TRD. Now, the big TRDs are 4 inches long, and they have a little weight to them, a little girth to them. So I like them. And one of the things I like about them is I can rig them on so many different pieces of terminal tackle. I can rig it on the Texas eye, which is one of my favorites this time of year because I get the benefit of both weight forward, action, and it's weedless. Or I could go to the Pro Bullets, which is more of a fixed head, but it's so much more weedless because of how the hook eye itself is integrated into the head. So when it's really weedy, or I'm working tailors, I like to use the Pro Bullets. I can give it a keel weighted look with the chin locks. The chin locks allows the bait to be more horizontal and kind of fall slower in shallow water. And then if I need casting distance or I'm in a more of a mud flat where being weedless is not nearly as important, I should say, to me, I would use something like the Redfish eye, which is a little bit longer shank than this way than the trout eye. So the Redfish eye does a good job. Now, some other profiles other than the big TRD that would be really effective, the darters. I love the darters. It's a great all-around bait year-round. Catches trout, catches cobia. It even catches snook because it looks like a needlefish. But this time of year, it does catch a lot of redfish. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's a 6-inch long bait. I don't know if I can get them on a 6-inch long bait. Just take a pair of scissors out, cut 1.5 inches off, and you got a 4.5-inch darters. So that's another good one. They're a little fussy. You want something a little smaller? I would use the 3.5-inch. This is the Trick Shots. It's traditionally a drop shot rig, but I will use it on some of the smaller hook setups we have. And again, looks a lot like a worm bait. Has some cool little ribbed edges in here that you can put some scent on. Look. Just work it slow, dragging it on the bottom like a dead worm. Naturally, baits like the Trout Tricks, and I'll just pull one out for you. This is about a 5-inch long bait. It's a little skinnier. Again, built for trout, but looks awfully like that picture I just showed you, doesn't it? Yes. And all the jigs and rigging hook styles that Z-Man offer all work very, very well with all these profiles. So your next question is probably going to be, so how do I work these? I would say as slow as you possibly can. So when you get up there on that grass flat and you see the tails, you're going to make a cast to a landing zone somewhere behind the fish. If this is the case where they're visible, let's say. And then you're going to pull this along the surface and then drop it close to where the redfish is tailing. And then basically, you're not going to pop it or anything. You're just going to jiggle it a little bit, just so it has a little bit of action. I like to scent these in that particular scenario, and they'll find it. And if you rig it weedless like this, it's not going to get hung up. They're going to crush it because this is what they're up there for. If you're on a mud flat, something like that, you could probably use a jig head, and you would just put it in a big bait like a darters or cut it down a little bit, and just toss it up there on the mud flat where you know you see the pushes of redfish up there everywhere, and every once in a while you see one boil, just swirl the water up. You see a little mud come off the bottom where they just ate one. Just throw it on a jig head and just slowly reel. One turn, drag, one turn, drag, and just pull the bait, pull the bait. They'll feel it, they'll come get it. But in a lot of these style profiles, targeting redfish with them and not the other fish that they were intended for, all it is a nice, slow, contrived presentation with some scent added. My favorite would probably be Procure in either my proprietary one, which is the crab and shrimp gumbo, which is just a combination of crustacean scents, or just get the all-around shrimp scent. It'll work fine. And just drag that around on the bottom. But remember, you're not swimming this, you're not bouncing it. If you want to lift it off the bottom every once in a while, just make sure it's clear and let it fall again. But in general, this is going to be one of those situations where it's not going to be real deep. and it's probably only going to be 2 foot of water even at the highest tide that time of year. And you're just going to drag it. You just want to kind of drag it or lift it up a little bit and set it back down. Take a little slack out. It's slow fishing. But I'm going to tell you, they're looking for it, and they are super, super vulnerable to it, and you will catch them. It is a tried and true trick. Now, you can do all kinds of things with this bait. You could Carolina rig it if you wanted to fish around a little bit deeper water on the edge of the creeks and mud flats there. You could even drop shot rig this kind of stuff as well to get longer casts if you can't get up on the flat and you just need to send it. And we used to do those old FlatsClass rigs back in the day. You remember Ray Van Horn and myself. We were utilizing that in a lot of situations where we couldn't get up skinny. But it's just this type of mentality, this type of thought process this time of year that can be the difference maker when you're trying to catch those spooky reds. Because when they get tuned in to a profile such as these, it's hard to get them to hit Mirrodines. It's hard to get them to hit top water. It's hard to get them to hit anything but this stuff. So that's why I wanted to share this with you. And Captain Socrates and I, who are doing a fishing school actually next weekend at Sodium Fishing here in Crystal River, we were talking a lot about how that little trick worm deal is a big time difference maker. All right, hopefully you're enjoying these videos that we've been doing here at FlatsClass YouTube. And if you have, I want you to share them with your friends. I also want you to tell your friends so that they're watching them too. If you don't share it with them, you tell them about it. And subscribe, please subscribe. This channel gets so much better once you guys start subscribing. In fact, we're starting to add a cameraman because so many of you have, so these videos are going to get better and better and better, I promise you. Also, want to remind all of our fans, if you haven't seen it yet, we're going to start dropping the Tidewater Diaries series right here on FlatsClass YouTube. In our first episode, Mr. Shaw Grigsby, that's right. He's not only a hero of mine, but now a friend. And I sat down in his home in Gainesville and did a very informal interview with him about how the Major League Fishing Bass Series got started, how One More Cast ended after 23 seasons. I mean, the guy's a bass legend, but I bet you didn't know he's a huge saltwater fan. I mean, big time, super fan. And he loves to hunt, and he shares some family stuff with us and even a few things that happened in his career that you might not know about. Okay, until next time. I'm going back out there and get my boat ready. I actually have to go fishing. That's right, I've got to go fishing later today and shoot more YouTube for you guys.